Evening, good afternoon for some of you. My name is Dr. Jill Krakow-Zincraft, and I'm really honored to be here with all of you as part of National Women's History Alliance for today's program, which is Leading the Change, Making Black Women's Lives Visible. And so before we dive into today's conversation, I'd like to briefly introduce the organization behind this work and the legacy that makes gatherings like this possible. NWHA has been a driving force in promoting and preserving women's history for more than 4 decades. Founded to ensure that women's contributions are recognized in our schools, communities, and national consciousness, NWHA has worked tirelessly to uplift women's stories too often left out of textbooks and public memory. And at the heart of this movement is Molly Murphy McGregor, who is with us today, who is one of NWHA's co-founders and a visionary leader in the women's history movement. Molly helped lead the national effort in 1980 that resulted in a congressional resolution establishing Women's History Week, which later expanded into a month-long celebration we observe every March. Her work helped shift women's history from the margins into the mainstream, and her leadership continues to inspire educators and changemakers across the country. And we are especially grateful tonight to be joined by our guest speakers, Diana Carpenter Madoshi, Rosita Stevens Halsey, Brenda Berkman, and Celeste Kirkland, who will lend their voices and insights to today's conversation. And we're so honored to have you with us and deeply appreciative of your contributions. Women's history gives us that roadmap. It reminds us of obstacles overcome, voices ignored or silenced, and progress still to be made. And today, as we focus on making Black women's lives visible, we do so with intention, recognizing that Black women's leadership, innovation, resistance, and brilliance have shaped this country in profound ways, often without adequate recognition. And so this space was created thoughtfully. It's not about pushing agendas, it's about reflection, learning, and community. And so just a few quick guidelines before we begin. Participation certainly is encouraged but not required. Please stay muted when not speaking. Feel free to use the chat and share reflections or questions. We'll move into discussion, and so I just ask that you try to keep the comments under a minute so that we can hear from multiple voices. And our goal today is simple but powerful: to create a space where Black women's lives are seen, honored, and understood, not as a side note, but as a foundation to the American story. And so now it is my honor to introduce Diana Carpenter Madoshi. Diana is a retired nurse with more than 30 years of experience and a passionate advocate for women's suffrage for over 2 decades. A founding member of the California Women's Suffrage Centennial Committee, that's a mouthful. She helped lead statewide celebrations marking women winning the vote. She continues to organize Women's History Month programs and serves on national nonprofit boards, including the League of Women Voters. Known as the go-to person who gets things done, Diana brings commitment, heart, and steady leadership to everything she touches. She is a mom of 3 and a grandmother of 6, inspiring her family and community to plant the seeds for future generations. And truly, she is a beautiful soul whose warmth radiates wherever she goes. And so please join me in welcoming Diana.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you for such a warm welcome. As you know, February is Black History Month, which I personally look forward to each year. Thank you, Carter Woodson. 100 years ago, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, an American historian, author, journalist, and founder of the Association of the Study of African American Life and History, launched a movement that ultimately created the first Black History Month. I love history and I have an unabashed shout out. I give an unabashed shout out to those who came before me. It is fascinating to read or hear about the accomplishments and the challenges of my people, African Americans, who were once forbidden to learn how to read, but nevertheless, they persisted. They were also forbidden to learn how to write, but they persisted despite threats and harsh punishment. Now, this month, I want to participate particularly in recognizing Black women historians like Rosalind Terborg Penn, Eleanor Smith, and Eleanor Porter, who founded the Black Women's Historian Association. They all open venues for many others to learn the contribution and historical impact of Black American women. Black history is Americans' history, as is women's history, Latina history, and so on. Learning our collective history has always been a challenge due to lack of documentation, records, or other critical source material. Many times it became deeply hidden history and, and a deliberate omission and also deliberate suppression. Today, we face challenges, again, including banning of books, like the story of Ruby Bridges, the courageous Black girl who integrated an all white school in Louisiana. Throughout time, there has been many attempts to nullify Black history, whitewash it, dilute Black history by banning books that cover civil rights and racism, and punish or fire teachers and principals who added Black history to the school curriculum. Sadly, this is the backdrop as we prepare activities to celebrate Black history this year. However, the recent attempts to whitewash or end the teaching of Black history and other ethnic histories in our schools and institutions will not succeed. The good news is that many people of all ages are continuing to seek out historical information to better understand and share our collective history. Now, let's go forward and continue to fight and include Black history in our curriculum. I would like to introduce you to Rosita Stephen Halsley, our next speaker.
Welcome, Brenda Berkman, the Vice President, and Celeste Kirkland, the Director of Monumental Women. This organization has for the last 10 years functioned as an all-volunteer, not-for-profit group. Monumental Women has worked to move history forward with their Women's History projects. Among their most notable achievements is the breaking of the bronze ceiling in New York City's Central Park in 2020 to create our Women's Rights Pioneers Monument. This is the first statue of real women, Sojourner Truth, Susan B. Anthony, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton in Central Park's 167-year history. Monumental Women continues to work to assist in and celebrate the recognition of women and people of color in public spaces. They created an initiative to honor Augusta Savage, the towering pioneer in the art world. Monumental Women has created a New York City virtual women's rights history trail, and much more. Their work emphasizes that public monuments matter now more than ever.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Rosita, for the introduction, and Diana for your thoughts, and Jill for organizing all this. I see that we have with us today a lot of our Monumental Women supporters, some board members, some former board members, and so I'm sure they'll help make the Q&A even more lively. Many thanks to the National Women's History Alliance for organizing this Black History Month webinar. As Rosita said, I'm Brenda Berkman. I'm the Vice President of Monumental Women. And Monumental Women is an all-volunteer nonprofit focused on writing all women back into the historical record through an inclusive education campaign to recognize and honor the contributions of women and people of color with tributes in our public spaces. Go to the next slide, please. You got me, Jill?
Yeah, give me a second. Got it.
Better you than me. As Rosita mentioned, one of Monumental Women's most notable achievements to date was creating the Women's Rights Pioneers Monument that depicts Sojourner Truth, Susan B. Anthony, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Next slide. This is the first statue of real women in Central Park. It only took 167 years. And notably, the first time a Black person was memorialized inside the park. Next slide. The monument was unveiled on August 26, 2020, in the early days of the pandemic. You can imagine what a challenge that was. On the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, enabling women the right to vote. You can watch the entire unveiling ceremony on Monumental Women's website. As one of the most popular areas of the park, we know that the monument has been seen by millions of people. 42 million people visit Central Park in the course of 1 year, and I would say the overwhelming majority of them walk down Literary Walk, where the Women's Rights Pioneers Monument is located. Next slide. A special feature of our Women's Rights Pioneers Monument is the Talking Statues app, in which the three women depicted speak when a QR code on the park sign is activated on your cell phone. The monument is voiced in Spanish and English by celebrated actresses. If you listen in English, the first voice that you hear is Viola Davis as Sojourner Truth. And the script is explaining about their lives and work together. There's also a recorded interview with the sculptor, Meredith Bergman, that explains the significance of every element that she included in the monument, as well as brief videos about the women. The app provides way more content than any explanatory sign is able to do. And it also allows people to access the content remotely. Now I'm going to hand over the next part of the program to Monumental Women Board member Celeste Kirkland to talk about our Augusta Savage initiative.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak about the Monumental Woman Augusta Savage initiative. Today, I'm here to talk about why honoring Augusta Savage with a permanent public work is not only overdue, it is actually essential. I dedicate my time to be part of this amazing organization, Monumental Woman, because representation in public spaces matter. These stories we elevate reflect who we value, and for far too long, the contributions of Black women, especially in the arts, have been overlooked. The Augusta Savage Initiative is deeply meaningful to me because her life represents courage, resilience, and vision. Augusta Savage came to New York with no money, no connections, and no stable place to live. She worked at Cooper Union, fought for her education, and built her career during some of the most challenging periods in American history, the Great Depression and World War II. Despite racism, financial hardship, and institutional barriers, she refused to let obstacles define her future. Augusta Savage was more than a gifted sculptor. She was a visionary. She was a Harlem Renaissance leader. She was a mentor who opened doors for Black artists at a time when institutions were closed to them. And she was an artist who understood that art is not separate from justice. It is part of the fight for it. She founded the Savage Studio of Arts and Crafts in Harlem, which later became the Harlem Community Art Center. She mentored major figures of the Harlem Renaissance and created space where none existed. In many ways, she built infrastructure for Black artistry that continues to influence us today. And yet, despite her monumental impact, she does not have a permanent public monument in our city. That absence speaks volumes. Part one of our initiative focuses on building a strong foundation. We're establishing a coalition of organizations, community leaders, labor educators, artists, and advocates, engaging the community to ensure that this monument reflects shared vision and public input. We need to identify a meaningful site, raising funds to hire a project manager, conduct public relations outreach, and launch a design competition. This is not just about installing a statue. This is about correcting historical erasure. It is about representation in our public spaces, about ensuring that when young people walk through our city, they see monuments that reflect the full story of our cultural and civic history. I didn't get to do that as a child. I didn't see many of the artists that reflect part of who I am. Public monuments, they shape our memories. They shape our values. They shape who we believe matters. Augusta Savage matters. Her work uplifted Black identity during one of the most transformative periods in American history. Her leadership created opportunity where there was exclusion. Her legacy is monumental, and our public spaces should reflect that truth. We invite everyone listening to become part of this historic effort. Please visit monumentalwoman.org. Again, that's monumentalwomen.org to learn more and sign up to support the Augusta Savage Initiative. Together, we can ensure that Augusta Savage's name and legacy stand permanently in the public square, visible, honored, and remembered for generations to come. Thank you.
I think our PowerPoint got away from Jill here for a second. Jill, if you could do me a favor and go back to, and that was great, Celeste. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
doing that. We got to get back on track with slides here. By the way, that slide that was shown with the photos of Augusta Savage, in the one photo she was working on one of her most famous pieces, which was the 1939 World's Fair piece that she did entitled Lift Every Voice and Sing. And there it is on the right-hand side there. So if we could go on to the next slide, because I want to briefly mention some ongoing projects of Monumental Women that also highlight Black women's contributions to our history in New York City and beyond. So you go to my next slide, Jill. There you go. First thing I'm going to talk about is Monumental Women's virtual Women's Rights History Trail that's accessible through our website. So as you're walking around the city and you have your cell phone in your hand, you can pull up our website and go to the trail. It encompasses all 5 New York City boroughs. And in this slide, you can see some examples of sites that are connected to Black history and Black women in Manhattan and Brooklyn. So you've got Elizabeth Jennings site in Manhattan, in Lower Manhattan, and also the sign at Wall Street that commemorates the municipal slave market in New York City. And then on the lower right-hand side, you see that we have on our trail in Brooklyn, Sarah J.S. Tompkins Garnett, very famous Black woman educator. Next slide. We have over 150 sites already on the trail, and we're looking to expand. We accept nominations for trail editions through our website. We're also looking to add a search function to our trail, expand the content for each site, and join with other trails around the country. Next slide. Another continuing Monumental Women project, one that combines art and history, is our Put Her on a Pedestal project, where we have partnered with groups like the New York State Museum, Tools and Tiaras, and others to enable young people to learn about important women in American history, and then draw a monument to that woman or women. And so here's a couple of examples from some of our artist mini historians. We have Sojourner Truth on the left-hand side, and a depiction of Ida B. Wells on the right-hand side. The template for this project is available on our website. So schools, Girl Scouts, other groups, you can just download the template and organize your own Put Her on a Pedestal project. I think right now, those of us on the East Coast would agree it'd be a great activity for kids stuck indoors because of our current East Coast snowmageddon. We've also sponsored a juried Put Her on a Pedestal contest with awards for different age groups. Next slide. So in conclusion, and so we can get to the Q&A, thanks for listening. Please visit our website, monumentalwomen.org. It's really deep, it's rich, it's got a lot of different paths that you can take to learn about our work. And sign up for our newsletter. We promise not to spam you. Follow us on Facebook. You see there the address for Facebook and Instagram if you're a social media type. And of course, we welcome your support of our work with a donation of any size. So thank you for listening. And I guess now, Jill, are we ready to go to Q&A?
Yes. No, hold on.
No.
Hold on, everyone.
Yes, maybe.
Hold on 1 second. I'm just going to end the slideshow. And I apologize about advancing the slides. Every time I touched my mouse, it moved not in the right direction. So thank you for
Hey,
catching that.
no problem. Super sensitive mouse you got there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, Brenda and Celeste, thank you so much. Before we go into our Q&A, the National Women's History Alliance put together 3 videos to highlight 3 extraordinary women whose lives remind us of why women's history matters. And so we're going to watch these very short vignettes about Claudette Colvin, Betty Reed Soskin, and Gladys Brown West. And then we'll open it up for questions. So I'm going to share my screen again. And thanks everyone for your patience. Okay.
This morning, we are remembering civil rights legend Claudette Colvin. She died yesterday, and she was 86 years old. Colvin was just 15 when she was arrested in 1955 for refusing to give up her seat on a segregated bus in Montgomery, Alabama. She, along with pioneers, the names we know, Rosa Parks, helped inspire the movement that changed the world for millions of Americans. For 86 years, Claudette Colvin was a living symbol for equal rights. It was March 2nd, 1955. Colvin and three friends were riding in the back of a Montgomery bus after school. She spoke with David Begnaud back in 2021 about the experience.
I was sitting in the session that was allowed for colored people, and this white lady came. The bus driver demanded for the 4 seats.
So 3 of them got up?
Yes.
And you refused?
So I refused, because this wasn't an elderly white lady, this was a young white lady. I said I could not move because history had me glued to the seat.
That happened 9 months before Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus. Colvin was arrested and was found guilty of assaulting police officers, a record she held until it was expunged just over 4 years ago.
And I'm no longer a juvenile delinquent at 82.
Colvin's impact went far beyond her bus boycott. At 16, she was one of 4 plaintiffs in a suit that would end Alabama bus segregation in the landmark Browder versus Gale Supreme Court decision.
I think of myself as a survival of the civil rights struggle.
In her later years, Colvin finally earned some long overdue recognition, including this call from then Vice President Kamala Harris in 2022.
Ms. Colvin, it's Kamala Harris. How are you?
You are such a role model of how at every phase
Of life, every stage of life.
we can be leaders in a way that, like you, make history at such an early stage of life.
A mother of 2, a grandmother of 5, and a great-grandmother of 7, Claudette Colvin leaves behind an unimpeachable legacy of bravery, resilience, and unimaginable courage.
I have been so many women, so many different times. I've been a daughter, a mother, a businesswoman, a federal worker. I was 85 before I became a park ranger. I retired at 100. I've actually been so many things that's hard to remember. I'm 101 years old. When I was in my 40s, I believe, I suffered a mental break. During my breakdown, I would be singing. I remembered several songs, only to find that I'd written them.
Little boy black, city streets calling.
They're fascinating songs. They tend to be about life as I was living it. I think that music has the power to change anything, because I could sing things that I couldn't say, but when I sang them, they were acceptable. I was discovered any number of times. I couldn't do that. I had 4 children. I wanted to be a Betty who sang. I didn't want to be a singer. I set the box of songs in the closet, and they stayed in that box for 40 years, only to be found a few years ago by a filmmaker who was doing a film about me, and they have provided a soundtrack for a film that tells my life story. When my 2 husbands and my father all died within 3 months, I was no longer defined by someone else's name. I didn't consider myself a feminist because the men in my life were suffering the same kinds of oppression that I was. It wasn't until the 90s that I began to take on feminism as a role for me. That's when I began to really feel like Betty. The advice I would give to myself as I was a young woman would be to never marry. I could have done all the things that I have done without a man. What's more important in life? The questions are the important things. Each time they get asked, there's a different meaning because you've grown so much from the last time you asked it. The answers are only temporary. Being 101 is really something because you feel as if you're starting all over again. I don't know what comes next, but I do know that I'm ready for it. I never really dreamed that there were so many parts to me. I don't think I'll be remembered as a park ranger. I want to be remembered as Betty. My name is Betty, and this is my brief but spectacular take on signing my name to freedom.
When I grew up as a little girl, I was in a country area, rural area, and we made our living by having a farm. I told myself that I did not like being out in the sun and working from sunrise to sunset and all that. So I made good grades in all of my subjects. So it's time to go to college. Well, since you're doing well in all subjects, you can major in math, and we know that you'll be successful. So when I went to college, I majored in math. Graduated after 4 years. I had applied for jobs in the government. I got hired in Darwin in 1956. I came by myself. My husband wasn't with me or anything. I was by myself. I would at least put it this way, I didn't know him at that time. At the same time that we were coming to work here, they were also bringing in a large computer. And they hired these mathematicians to learn to work this computer. We hadn't had any computer teaching or knowledge, so we had to master this job that they want us to do. So we had to learn how to program and code for this big computer. My part in the global positioning system would be working more with the orbit over the water. A lot goes into the scientific computation to generate an orbit, which is a database used in GPS. So the different people who did civilian applications learned to use the database that we generated, and that was the foundation that GPS was built on. When you grew up as a little black girl, our school was separated from the white schools. And we had separate buses. And many times we would get the old hand-me-down things from the white school. Books that weren't new like their books were. But all of that helped to make us, I think, work harder because, you know, you were behind the 8 ball to start with, you know, so you had to work harder. But I always was motivated by doing something new and completing something, having a goal. Because usually I had a mind of my own. I tend to think for myself, a little impatient with others who don't think the way I do. Happy birthday, Navy! 243 years.
Okay. Okay, so now we get to open it up for some Q&A. And so I would ask if you could raise your hand and I'll call on you, ask you to unmute, and then you can ask our speakers anything about today's presentation. And so before people, as people are starting to get their questions together, I have a couple questions. I would love to know, who was the first Black woman you learned about in history, or at least the woman that had impact for you? And that question goes to all 4 of you.
I can start. This is Celeste Kirkland.
Thanks,
One of
Celeste.
one of the first women that I learned about, and I learned about many, but this one stood out. It was Mary McLeod Bethune.
Mm.
um, because I learned how she taught, how she basically made her own school, and she did so many things at a time that I didn't even believe that she would be able to have a school or she'd be able to teach. I learned a lot about the complexities of Black people and especially Black women not being able to speak up and things of that matter. So for me, as a child. I don't even remember how early, but I know it was very early that I learned about Mary McLeod Bethune. And it just stuck with me all my life. I was just always reading about her, looking into artifacts. If there was anything on TV later, PBS or otherwise, I was always fascinated by the things she was able to accomplish at that time.
Yeah. Thank you, Celeste.
Mhm.
I think Celeste is younger than I am, and so probably a few more resources were available about women in history when she came along. I remember reading a whole series of history books in third grade, and maybe there were two women in this series of books. Clara Barton, of course, and maybe Eleanor Roosevelt, not sure. But I thought, my gosh, there's got to be a lot more women who are deserving of recognition for their roles in our democracy and our American history. And later on, I learned about, because I was a tennis nut, I learned about Althea Gibson and the efforts that she had to make as a Black woman to try and get recognition for her fantastic tennis. And Billie Jean King has, over the years, acknowledged how important Althea Gibson has been to women's tennis and to diversity in tennis.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda.
For me, that's interesting. Now at 80, um, I remember in the books I read, the few books that was available to us, and I grew up, uh, in Black schools, and then go to integration school or integrated school until junior high. Um, but so the women for me were women that I saw in the community that were working that um, part of the NAACP that participated in trying to desegregate the uh, the parks and the swimming pool. In East St. Louis, there was only one swimming pool, and they were only for the whites. And I remember my aunt, who was a school teacher, talking about taking some kids there and then uh, hopping in the car because people were throwing eggs at them. So it was later that I started reading more, and actually as a teenager and meeting other feminists, should I say, that I start hearing more of my Black history, more of the women. And one of the women that I'm happy to have met was Betty, the woman that we that was in the video. But sadly, for a lot of us of my age, we did not necessarily we did not get it in our books. Some of us got it through Jet magazine. I remember about Thea Gibson, Gibbs, and Jet magazine. Jet magazine would have these profiles of people in sports, the athletes, but I did not know about the other things of women like Ida B. Wells until later.
Yeah. Thank you, Diana. And how about you, Rosita?
I started school in Topeka, Kansas, and Cheyenne, Wyoming. So you can imagine there were no Black people highlighted in the books that I was given. But when I moved to Washington, D.C., I believe the first person that I learned about was Rosa Parks. And no slight to Rosa Parks and Claudette Colvin, both of whom have been mentioned today. But I found out in my later life as an adult that my aunt actually was jailed for refusing to go to the back of the bus in 1940 in Petersburg, Virginia. And very few people have ever heard of her. And very few people knew that she successfully led sit-ins in Washington, D.C. in 1943 and 1944, and integrated two major restaurants. So, and she is still not in most history books. But that is a problem that has been universal, where women and people of color have been basically ignored from being a part of history books that were used, especially in public schools.
Yeah. Thanks, Rosita.
I would like to speak.
Good. Was somebody talking?
This is Quay Reed speaking. I didn't see where to raise my hand. Is it
That's
okay if I
okay.
say something? Okay, yes. I I can agree with Diana about local women. Excuse me. But before I talk about my local person, I want to talk about Fannie Lou Hamer because I am from Mississippi, and I'm not sure at what point I found out about her, but she's one of my favorite role models, and I remember, hearing her speak at the Democratic Convention that year as well. In terms of local people, um, I had such outstanding educators in my small hometown in Mississippi. And most recently, in some of my research, I found out about a lady named Emma Gooch who was involved in the local NWHA, as Diana was talking about. And of course, my mom was involved too. And recently, we discovered minutes that this lady, Miss Emma Gooch, had taken of Black voter registration drives in the late 60s and the early 70s. And she along with my mom and some other ladies and men went from church to church and signed people up, and they had minutes of where people would pay 25 cents at the meetings and all of that. And this was in a town called Water Valley, Mississippi, my hometown. And then the county is Yellowbushy County. And geographically, we're like 18 miles south of the University of Mississippi, which is in Oxford. So when we found these minutes, these booklets, we did send them to the university, and now there's a Emma Gooch collection at the University of Mississippi in archives. And I just want to share that and mention some of the other women, of course, were, excuse me, the women that we saw performing, like Nina Simone, Mahalia Jackson, and everybody's already mentioned Rosa Parks, but I digress to say that the women in my community were probably the first women who made an impact on my life. And most recently, I've had a chance to interview a lot of them and write about them as well. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Quay, for sharing those.
I'm glad you brought that up. And this is to all of us. A lot of things we find or stumble on through letters and information that no one knew what their relatives have done, or you find out that they were involved. Like the aunt that was the teacher that she helped fundraise the money for the swimming pool to be put in the Black community. Um, if we seek and start looking for that information and sharing stories with others, we will probably be surprised for how much we gain and how much we can get of these stories, because we still have to fight to have our place in history, to have our history acknowledged.
Yeah. Thank you, Diana. Does someone else have a question? Yeah. Ella, are you raising your hand?
Yes, I am.
Great.
First of all, I'd like to thank each of you ladies for, sharing all the information you have tonight. I've learned a lot just by what you brought before me. And I just want to thank Brenda Berkman, who's a very special friend of mine, okay, who means a lot to a lot of women, diverse women. I know some people know her background, but the part that I want to acknowledge is that Brenda is the first woman in New York City that brought New York women into the fire department. Okay. It was 41. I was part of that 41. Okay. And Brenda was there and for me and instrumental to all of the women that she helped to bring into the job. Now there's over 100, I think 180 women in the job because of Brenda, because she made a stand to allow women to come into the job. So I don't know if there's a statue of Brenda as a monumental woman, but there should be one. She's the one that initiated it, and I think she belongs right with Sojourner Truth, the other two women up there. So I'm just glad to have acknowledged and have Brenda Berkman as a friend of mine. But thank you, ladies, for sharing all the information. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ella.
Ella, that's so nice of you to say. It was one of the great things about being able to bring many diverse women into the New York City Fire Department was the fact that they became friends of mine. And we developed a bond together, really pretty much regardless of our backgrounds in most cases. And that, I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of Americans, including women, don't really know very much about their histories. And so history has always been a passion of mine, started before the fire department. And I feel really lucky that I'm at this point in my life, I'm able to go back to it and be involved in uplifting women's stories, including Black women, in our public consciousness, in our public spaces.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so, does anyone else have any thoughts or questions before we kind of wrap it up? Oh, go ahead, Tracy. I see your hand raised.
Hi.
Hi.
I didn't know how to raise my hand either, so I asked my partner, Renee, and because she does Zoom, and she came over here and she said, what you do is you go like this. So I did it, yes. Anyway, first of all, thank you. I'm a huge fan of Monumental Woman. So it's so encouraging to see people keep on doing things, because I'm getting older too, and I see women who are getting older to keep being involved. So very inspiring for me to do the same. But when I first heard about the Augusta Savage statue, I wanted to find out more about who she was. So I did some research, which I guess is a testament to Monumental Women, because I got to know who that was. And I think about it a lot, because I saw that her Lift Your Voice statue from the World's Fair was destroyed after. So what I've been wondering for a while now is, will that be included in her statue, or what that statue is going to look like? And just out of my curiosity, if anyone knows that.
Well, we don't know what it's going to look like yet because we haven't held our design competition, and hopefully we'll be able to move into that phase of honoring Augusta Savage very soon. But yeah, I mean, many of us who were promoting the honoring of Augusta Savage are very, determined to somehow lift every voice and sing into the honor to her. Although we definitely want the public to have some idea of what she looked like physically, that this is about all the aspects of Augusta Savage's work and not just the one spectacular piece of sculpture that she did that was destroyed. So you saw that photo in the PowerPoint presentation that showed her working on Lift Every Voice and Sing, which, by the way, also is sometimes called the harp, although she did not call it the harp. And so, what would be great is if we got some design submissions that somehow incorporated that into what we would end up choosing as the ultimate monument to Augusta Savage.
Brenda,
yeah,
maybe it might have been a couple of years ago, PBS in my area did a presentation about her, aired, and they showed the statue, and they talked about her and the World's Fair, and the reason they said it was so large, and she didn't have the money, and no one came forth, and that really hurt my heart. This magnificent piece of art, no one came forth to help her, get it back. But I'm still hoping that, like, Lift Every Voice and Sing, that's our Black anthem. And that,
and she grew up with the composer and the lyricist, the brothers, and so they were friends of hers. So it had a great deal of meaning to her. Wasn't seen as a Black anthem quite yet when she was working on this, but there is a PBS special called Searching for Augusta Savage. You can watch it online, and it gives you, a great deal of background about her life. And she never had any money. And so she had no money to cast it in bronze or to be able to store it. And I believe there was an effort to help her with that fell through. And she knew when she built that thing that if she couldn't remove it from the grounds, it would be bulldozed. All of the structures that couldn't be removed from the grounds at the end of the fair were taken down, except for a couple of.
What about the possibility that PBS people donated, and maybe Monumental Women might want to contact some of those people that donated to the production of that particular film. Nothing.
Well,
nothing
we have talked to the filmmakers.
Oh, good.
And last we talked to them, they're very busy with putting together a full-length feature on Augusta Savage. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out of that. It's not a great time for documentaries in terms of funding, and I don't have to explain to this group all the challenges that we face in the arts and in our history, reclaiming our history as a result of electoral politics right now. So.
Yeah.
I'd like to follow up on something that Brenda said, but also when people talk about Brenda's work allowed so many women to become firefighters. Well, that sounds like it just happened. And that's one of the things I want to remind us of, that these things don't just happen, that people go to court, they risk everything. They risk practically their life, certainly their livelihood, to bring forth the kind of change that we live with today. And I just want to remind people that we are in a really difficult time. But if you look at any one of these women, you can see that they came through it, and that there's so many more of us than there are of them. And we have so many more allies than we ever had before. But again, Brenda, when they said, "Oh, well, Brenda made it available," yeah, at great cost. And I think that that's important for all of us to know, that people don't just make things happen. It's a real challenge. Um, very often we're not even successful, and we don't even have the support from the people we need to have support from. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, but I also want us to remember of all the things that these women have been through, and they came through the other side. So as long as we're together, we can move forward. Thanks.
And I think Minnesota, and Tracy has a up close and personal experience of this right now. Minnesota led the way in showing how, when the community comes together in defense of their neighbors, that we can, do successful pushback on these terrible things that are happening in our country right now. And it's never just one person, it's all of us working together and being able to draw on that strength and initiative and creativity. I mean, if you watch some of the stuff that happened in Minnesota online, it has to make you laugh, actually. But that's what we're faced with, Molly. And I agree that now's the time to look to these heroines of the past for examples and strength, to continue our fight for to move history forward, as we like to say at Monumental Women.
Yes, thank you. Molly, thank you. So, I almost feel silly closing this out, because I feel like all of you really should have the last word. So, as we close today's session, I want to give our four speakers the last word. And so, one thing you want all of us to know.
Storytelling matters.
Oh, love that.
Storytelling matters. I learned about Brenda Berkman, and what she accomplished. I come from a family full of women. My grandmother had 10 children, 9 girls and 1 boy. And I didn't learn much of what I knew in schools. I learned through my family, through storytelling. And after just not even learning about Brenda Berkman, but just through the resilience and strength of the women in my family, I too became the first woman in transit that is a power cable maintainer. But I'm only able to do it because I've seen it done. And I know the stories that have been told about women before me that have accomplished it. So storytelling matters.
Thank you, Celeste. Brenda.
I mean, it's hard to top that, because I really believe that. I really believe that we have to have more stories told, a greater diversity of stories told. But it also just comes down to each of us to talk to our own families, to our neighbors, to people that we know, or to investigate some book or movie or something that inspires us, that shows us the resilience and the strength of women throughout our history.
Thank you, Brenda. Diana.
Am I on mute?
No.
Oh. Well, one thing I've heard is each one teach one. From the older women that I have met, and I believe in that. And so most of my time now when I prepare on our women's history programs, I try to bring young people in. Intentionally, I'll ask people to buy a ticket to the program for someone, a high school student, and that because we have to continue to move things along. And so, bearing in mind, each one teach one, we all have stories and we know of stories. And so when we open ourselves up for more storytelling, telling our stories, and bringing younger people within our circle and building our own diverse circle, I think that is the way forward for us in promoting history.
Thank you, Diana. And Rosita.
It's so important now, especially that we can preserve our history. And just because it may be our family or our neighbors or our community does not mean it's not important in a larger realm. And I encourage everyone to share their stories and their knowledge with the young people in their family, but also to encourage the young people in your family to do oral histories of the elders and older people in their families, and to find a way to save it, whether it's a time capsule or a journal or what have you, especially now that books are being destroyed, taken off the shelves and all. We may need to amplify telling oral stories, because those books that we would hope people would be interested in may not be in public libraries or on bookshelves.
Thank you.